Gabriela Cuevas Barron to make her statement.
Thank you very much, Claire. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you all. We are delighted that you could join us. Ms. Andrea Eder-Gerstenle, President of the Federal National Council of Austria, Ms. Doris Burz, Vice President of the National Council of Austria. Knowing you are all here today, I cannot help but be proud of this platform of women leaders of Parliament. Indeed, in order to respond to the immense challenges that we are facing today, leadership must have a woman's face now more than ever, especially in our parliamentary institutions. Most recently, we have seen women leaders respond in bold and successful ways to the COVID-19 crisis. Not only have they succeeded with a people-centered approach, they have also shown resolve, determination, bravery, and have prepared responses with a scientific basis. I must point out that this is not only a matter of storytelling. Data shows that women's leadership is good for development, climate action, and peace. Studies have repeatedly shown correlations between women's leadership and less corruption. This is a virtuous women's lead that blazes the right trail. I see this summit of women speakers of Parliament as a platform to rally women's leaders, to showcase the women-led response to COVID-19 as its repercussions, as to make this women-led response our world response to the huge challenge it is facing. Our joint efforts in this direction are crucial in a world characterized by persistent inequality for women and girls. While recognizing how far we have come, we cannot underestimate how far we still have to go. Taking stock of the many inequalities that women battle against, one key area that concerns us here today in particular is the incredible unequal participation that women have in decision-making. To give you some data, IPU is really good collecting data from women's participation in politics. The percentage of women parliamentarians around the world has only grown from 11% to just about 25% in the last 25 years. That's more than a generation. Women speakers make up less than 20% of all speakers of Parliament in the women heads of state and heads of government make up only 5 to 6% of leaders globally. Incremental progress is good, but clearly it is not sufficient. Considering that there are issues that disproportionately affect women, this huge inequality in political decision-making cannot persist. For instance, another area where inequality hits women hard the economy. Globally, women earn 23% less than men, and the economic downturn brought about by this pandemic is further disproportionately affecting the socioeconomic status of women. Women continue to take on the majority of unpaid domestic work and parental tasks. They are more likely than men to have low-paid and unprotected jobs in the informal sector. They are thus excluded from social protection, health insurance, and unemployment pay. This makes them more likely to be the first to lose their income, which is not just crucial for them, but for their families, communities, and society at large. If we take a look, for example, in terms of health, women make up 70% of health workforce caring for those affected. Women are everywhere fighting this pandemic. Women are in the front line fighting against the virus. This means that they are at high risk of infection while also keeping households as well as the whole of society afloat. Violence against women is also a very important topic that we are going to be addressing during these 2 days. This violence against women was already at unacceptable proportions before the pandemic, with 137 women killed every day globally by a member of their own family. Due to the confined living conditions, economic stress, and fear surrounding the pandemic, we are seeing increasing levels of domestic violence, sexual abuse, and sexual exploitation. Previous health outbreaks have taught us that the health-related resources risk being diverted during the pandemic away from the specific needs of women and girls, including survivors of violence and those in need of sexual and reproductive healthcare and services. COVID-19 exposed the full impact of gender-based inequalities and further exacerbated them. The cost of a crisis are never gender blind. On the contrary, the impact hits women and girls harder. We need to remain very vigilant of the threat of reneging on the commitment of achieving gender equality goals. The pandemic is jeopardizing collective successes obtained during the recent years, which enabled progress towards making the promises of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Beijing Declaration a platform for action for a reality for all women and girls. While the COVID-19 crisis has altered priorities and exacerbated inequalities, it also gives us unparalleled opportunities to build back better. Now, more than ever, gender equality has to be a priority. It must be placed at the core of parliamentary responses in a post-COVID-19 world. Gender responses policies built through gender-sensitive approaches, processes, and institutions are not a luxury, but an absolute necessity. I would like to take a moment to go beyond the facts. After all, this is not just about numbers, but about women's lives. Addressing the issues that disproportionately affect women is not only a matter of empathy, it is also a matter of justice. Women make up half of the world's population, but our voices and demands often fall on deaf ears. Our safety is never guaranteed, and our work is not adequately compensated. Such a state of affairs has gone on for far too long. But make no mistake, we who are gathered here today on the occasion of this summit can take action now. In that spirit, allow us to agree and commit to take powerful actions in at least 5 concrete actions. 1, to eliminate all forms of discriminations in the law by identifying and repealing or amending all discriminatory legislation, every discriminatory law, by introducing new legislation if necessary and overseeing the implementation of gender-responsive legislation. I invite all women speakers to commit to leading gender-responsive legislative reform in their respective countries. This is the way to start, leading by example, eliminating all forms of discrimination. 2, to support other women entering politics and pursuing political careers by promoting quotas and parity in politics, by mentoring and empowering women aspirants and candidates, and by safeguarding all political processes from violence against women. I urge women speakers to be the leaders of an unprecedented boost in women's safe and respected participations. 50-50 in your country, 50-50 in the world. We must also empower women in the economy and at work by addressing unequal pay, unpaid care work, and gaps in social protection. I urge women speakers to be the leaders of equality at work and of women's social protections, and to drive a new paradigm that recognizes and values unpaid care work. Let me be clear. If our institutions, culture, societies, and politics remain unchanged and male-dominated environments, only rules and procedures created by men will prevail. We need to be decisive and push for affirmative action. This is not just about opening windows. We must be brave and open doors for women and girls. Today, our demand is nothing less than full gender equality. 3, we need to end all violence against women in all aspects of society, including at the government level in the executive, legislative, and judiciary powers. Regrettably, violence remains common, and it undermines women's most basic rights around the world. Therefore, decisive, zero-tolerance policies against female genital mutilation, against limitation of women's rights, against child marriages, against domestic abuse and femicide must be enforced. 4, we need to transform our parliament into gender-sensitive institutions, where there are no barriers to women's full participation, where equality between men and women is respected, and where gender-responsive outcomes are promoted. I urge women speakers to lead parliaments towards more gender-sensitive processes and functioning, and more gender-responsive outcomes. And 5, to improve financial investment in gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. The immense work towards gender equality needs to be matched with the necessary funding. I urge women speakers to invest and make their parliaments invest in gender equality in society, and to have budgets that respond more effectively to the specific needs of women and girls in all sectors of our societies. These 5 steps, if taken collectively and around the world, can lead to a better future, not just for us, but for generations to come. The task before us is immense. We must act now, and we must act together, hand in hand, side by side. We can drive the change we wish to see in our society. This is an occasion to uplift women's leadership, to show resolute willpower, and to embrace bravery while we embark upon an ambitious, yet necessary, undertaking, write a new history for women all over the world. This is the only way to honor those who have sacrificed their lives only so that we could vote and run for political office. In their memory, let us afford every single and each one of all women and girls with the opportunity to take ownership of their lives. No one will be left behind. Allow us then to proceed with this summit under the spirit of inspiring, resolute, empathic, and people-centered deliberations. Thank you very much to all for taking the time. Thank you very much for being here in this virtual summit for women speakers of parliament. I am sure that our conversations, debates, deliberations are going to be fruitful. And let's keep in mind, we have in our hands the possibility of changing the reality that we are living. We have in our hands the possibility of giving a better future to the next generations of women and girls. Thank you very much, and welcome to this 13th Summit of Women Speakers of Parliament.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for those inspiring remarks. And indeed, crises are not gender blind, as you say, but we need a women's led response. And indeed, the 5 steps that you so eloquently outlined with the evidence gathered by IPU, which it does so wonderfully. Thank you very much for your remarks, Madam President. I would now like